On our anniversary, I proposed to my girlfriend Isla wearing a hazmat suit and a gas mask, because that's what it takes when your partner has severe OCD. But before I could even get the ring out, her male assistant, Ethan, rolled his eyes back and collapsed like he was having a heart attack. The next moment, Isla dropped to her knees on the lawn, no hesitation, no second thoughts, and threw herself onto Ethan like a woman possessed. She cradled him in her arms, yelling for someone to call 911 while she pressed her lips to his, giving him CPR right there on the grass. Then came the kicker. Through labored breaths and sobs, she vowed to marry him. Said she'd give him half the company. Half the company. I stood there, still holding the ring, watching the words roll off her tongue like she'd rehearsed them. Watching as bits of grass clung to the knees of her pristine white skirt, knees that had never once touched the floor of our sanitized apartment. And suddenly, I realized something. The OCD? The rules? The surgical gloves and color-coded storage bins? All of it was a lie. But the Alzheimer's diagnosis? That part was real. So now I'm curious. Will Ethan still love her when she can't tell a toothbrush from a spoon? When she forgets who he is? When she drools on her blouse and screams at the microwave? I can't wait to find out. She clutched Ethan's lifeless body, shaking him with frantic desperation as she sobbed. Ethan, please wake up. If you wake up, I'll marry you. I swear, I'll give you half the company, okay? Her tears poured down like beads from a broken necklace, splashing onto his face as if she were weeping over a dead husband. To anyone who didn't know better, it looked like she'd just lost the love of her life. And the way she said it, the rhythm, the conviction, it didn't sound spontaneous. It sounded practiced. Memorized. Like something she'd rehearsed 100 times in her head. Then, right on cue, Ethan's eyelids fluttered. His eyes opened slowly. His voice trembled. Isla, do you really mean that? You'd marry me? She gave a tear-streaked smile, nodding hard with the wide-eyed relief of someone who just survived a war. Then she threw her arms around him, clinging to him like a lifeline. And the crowd, God, the crowd, burst into applause. People cheered. Chanted. Kiss. 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 Suddenly, they were the perfect couple in a movie scene. Tragedy. Love. Redemption. All wrapped up in a viral clip waiting to happen. And me? I stood to the side. In a hazmat suit. Wearing a gas mask. Holding a ring box like a fool in a Halloween costume. My grip tightened around the box. Isla, the woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman with crippling obsessive-compulsive disorder, was now holding another man. Face to face. Skin to skin. In front of everyone. This was the same woman who once had a meltdown because I forgot to put on gloves before holding her hand. The same woman who scrubbed her skin raw, 99 times, after brushing past a stranger in an elevator. She couldn't stand another human being within 3 feet of her. Said everyone carried invisible bacteria. Said intimacy was a health hazard. And yet here she was. On her knees. Mouth to mouth. Crying. Promising love. Giving away my company. I used to think I was protecting her from the world. Now it feels like the joke's on me. She clung to Ethan like she'd never let go, arms locked tight, grass stains and mud smeared across her knees from where she'd dropped down to save him. There was even a trail of saliva at the corner of her lips. But she didn't flinch. Didn't panic. Didn't scrub herself bloody. Not like she used to. The so-called OCD? The no-touch rules? The panic attacks over invisible germs? All of it, fake. The truth was simpler. She just never loved me. Ethan, on the other hand, was still young. The smug glint in his eyes said it all. He didn't even try to hide the triumph. But just as I started to step back, he flushed bright red. He pushed Isla off him, lips tight like he was trying to play innocent. Isla, Noah's still here, he stammered, pretending to sound apologetic. It's okay. It's my fault, I ruined your proposal. Isla turned toward me with a glance so cold, it could frost glass. Her brow furrowed like I was the one causing a scene. I was saving someone's life, she snapped. Only someone with a filthy mind would think that was inappropriate. If this had been a year ago, I might have lost it, yelled, stormed off, demanded an explanation. But not today. I just lifted my hands slowly. Unclipped the straps. Took off the gas mask. Pulled down the filter mask underneath. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. The air felt sharp and clean. Like clarity. I said quietly, as long as he's okay, that's all that matters. But Isla recoiled like I'd coughed blood in her face. She actually took 3 steps back, dramatically, like she was dodging the plague. Her expression twisted into disgust. Who told you to take that off? Do you have any idea how many bacteria are flying out of your mouth right now? That's disgusting. I gave a dry little laugh. Right. Of course. Nothing says shameless like weaponizing an illness you faked to reject someone who actually tried to protect you. She'd just finished giving Ethan mouth to mouth, not a single complaint. But the moment I pulled down my mask, you'd think I'd spat blood on her shoes. Isla waved me off like I was an eyesore, her face twisted in revulsion. She spoke quickly, like the words couldn't leave her mouth fast enough. Noah, I need to take him to the hospital to get checked out. Just go home, okay? I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said only this. Come home early tonight. I need to talk to you. She blinked. Surprise flickered across her face, confusion, even. Because usually, if she so much as gave Ethan a ride to a client dinner, I'd lose it. I'd spiral into jealousy. Demand promises. Fight her for sitting in the same car as another man. But today? I was calm. Too calm. There was no fight in me. No panic. No accusation. She stood there, lips slightly parted, like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked away. Slid the ring box back into my coat pocket, the same box I'd carried for months, waiting for the right moment. I let out a breathless laugh. Bitter. Hollow. No use for it now. Maybe I'd auction it off. Get some of the blood money back. As I shoved my hand into my pocket, my fingers brushed against a piece of stiff paper. I pulled it out. It was her medical report. Heavy stock, pale ink, unmistakable format. Patient, Isla. Sex, female. Age, 28. Diagnosis, organic brain dysfunction. Mid-stage Alzheimer's disease. That's what did it. That's why I proposed today. Why I didn't wait. Because I knew. I already knew. I thought I was being responsible. Noble, even. Taking care of the woman I loved, before she forgot my name, forgot how to speak, forgot what colors meant. But looking at her now? The lies. The coldness. The way she clung to another man like I was invisible. I wasn't being noble. I was just being a fool. The reason Isla kept dodging my proposal was clear now. There was someone else taking up space in her heart. I folded the medical report with quiet precision and slid it back into my coat pocket. Let's see how Ethan handles her when the real symptoms set in, when she can't dress herself, forgets where she is, and starts drooling on the furniture. Let's see if he still wants to marry the woman he thought he understood. I was just unlocking my car door when my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Noah, what Isla said about marrying me and giving me half the company, obviously she was just joking. Don't take it seriously, man. Also, I heard you've been with her 8 years and still haven't gotten a promotion. Hope you're not feeling bitter about that? A cold smile crept across my lips. 8 years. Has it really been that long? Since college, I'd been by Isla's side. From the moment she dreamed of launching her startup, I was there. I emptied my entire savings, ignored my parents' warnings, hustled every day to help her chase that dream. I found investors. Pitched to clients. Took meetings she didn't want to take. Did the grunt work? The ghost work? And what did I get? A meaningless title, just a junior team lead, technically reporting to her. I'd asked, gently at first, if she'd consider promoting me. Not just for status, so we'd look more equal, more like partners. She looked at me like I'd betrayed her. Said my love wasn't pure anymore. Said I was chasing power. Said once we were married, people would respect me anyway. And I, God help me, I believed her. I believed every soft-spoken lie. But not anymore. That ends today. No more waiting. No more apologizing for wanting more. From now on, I'm living for myself. With that thought, I pulled out my phone and made the call. Conrad, I said calmly, you can finally bring out that share transfer agreement I left with you. Back when Isla was first building the company, her obsessive-compulsive disorder made client dinners nearly unbearable. Just sharing a booth with someone made her nauseous. She'd sit there pale and sweating, barely able to touch her food. So I offered to go in her place. Problem was, I didn't hold much weight back then. Low title. Low respect. They made me drink just to test me, glass after glass, until I tore my stomach lining and ended up vomiting blood into a toilet bowl. I landed in the ER. Isla showed up crying, truly shaken. She said if I was willing to bleed for her company, then I deserved part of it. She insisted on transferring 45% of the shares to my name. I didn't want to take it. But she wouldn't back down. So I handed it off to my lawyer, Conrad, and kept it quiet. I never used it. Never even brought it up. So on paper, Isla still appeared to own it all. She was the sole shareholder. The image of control. That was 6, maybe 7, years ago. She's probably forgotten it even exists. And now she wants to hand half the company to Ethan? All because he played dead for 5 minutes and she mistook it for love? Let's see how romantic it all feels when the lawyers get involved. My hand clenched around the phone. Tight enough that my knuckles whitened. By the time I looked up again, I realized I was already parked in front of our house. Funny. I hadn't even noticed the drive. For the first time in years, I didn't stop at the door and spray myself down with disinfectant. Didn't scrub my hands raw or check the soles of my shoes. Instead, I peeled off the hazmat suit, every last piece of it, and tossed it straight into the garbage bin outside. No hesitation. No guilt. Just freedom. On any other day, the moment I walked through the door, I'd spend 4 or 5 hours cleaning the house, bleaching surfaces, scrubbing corners, making sure not a speck of dust survived. But today? I didn't bother. I walked straight into the bedroom and started packing. Thanks to years of pre-approved organization, it didn't take long. Everything of mine had always been kept strictly separate anyway. Funny, isn't it? 8 years together, and our home still looked like 2 strangers lived in it. All because Isla believed anything that wasn't hers was contaminated. No matter how many times I washed something, she swore it still carried other people's germs, germs that drove her insane. Even our so-called shared items were kept in 2 different cabinets. But the illusion didn't hold up. Because tucked inside her cabinet, right next to her silk blouses and color-coded scarves, was one of Ethan's neckties. Not sealed. Not wrapped. Just lying there, like it belonged. When I asked her about it months ago, she shrugged. Said Ethan had asked her to drop it off at the dry cleaners and she'd simply forgotten to return it. I wanted to believe her. But now? Now I see it clearly. The favoritism. The shifting gaze. The rewritten boundaries. It had all been happening in plain sight. I looked up. Somehow, night had already fallen. I rolled my suitcase toward the front door and left it there, ready to grab and go the moment I decided this chapter was over. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Isla. Ethan's not doing well. He's being admitted for observation. I probably won't be home tonight. I stared at the screen in silence. Then, almost involuntarily, I opened Instagram. There he was. Ethan. Posting a photo. In the picture, Isla was sitting beside him, smiling, sleeves rolled up as she helped him crack crab legs. Her fingers were slick with butter. She didn't seem to care. The caption read, "They say the best thing a man can do is marry a woman who's kind and caring. Well, I hit the jackpot." I laughed. Quiet. Hollow. Almost impressed. Looks like her OCD cleared up real fast. I had planned to wait for her tonight. To sit down. To talk, one last time. But clearly, that was no longer necessary. It wasn't until then that I realized how empty my stomach felt. I headed to the local grocery store and picked up a few things. While browsing the produce aisle, my hand paused over a bunch of cilantro. For years, I'd avoided it. Isla couldn't stand the smell, said it made her nauseous. Even the sight of it was too much. So I cut it from every meal. Every shopping list. Every craving. But tonight, I dropped a bundle into the cart. Back home, I made myself a cilantro lime steak salad. It wasn't fancy, but it tasted like freedom. I just finished my second bite when the front door opened. Isla. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Didn't she say she was staying at the hospital with Ethan? She stepped inside, eyes narrowing immediately. Her nose twitched like she'd walked into a chemical spill. "Noah," she snapped, "what the hell are you eating? It smells disgusting in here." But she didn't scream. Didn't panic. Didn't run for the bleach. She just gave me a once-over, head to toe, and made a face like I was covered in sewage. "You're not even wearing your protective gear," she muttered. "So unsanitary." I stabbed another piece of steak, twirled it in the cilantro, and popped it into my mouth. "If it bothers you," I said coolly, "stay back." Her fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag, knuckles turning pale. She stood still for a beat. Then, without a word, walked over and sat down beside me. I didn't move. She hesitated, just for a moment, then did something unthinkable. With bare hands, no gloves, no barrier between us, she reached across the table, and gently laid her hand on top of mine. "Ethan's actually been helping me with exposure therapy," Isla said softly, still resting her hand on mine. "He wants me to slowly work through my OCD. I was planning to surprise you, you know. He's a good guy. Really considerate. He even reminded me at the clinic today to come home early." She tilted her head, her voice gentle, coaxing. "Can you not be so hard on him?" I pulled my hand away without a word. Kept chewing. Expression unreadable. She didn't push. Didn't raise her voice. Just started playing with her fingertips, that performative smile still glued to her lips. "The doctor said I've made great progress," she said, like she was offering a gift. "If I fully recover, we should get married. Wouldn't that be nice?" She was being sweet. Too sweet. And I knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't reconciliation. It was a graceful out. Her way of letting me save face, pretending none of the betrayal ever happened. But to me, it was laughable. Therapy? This was how she justified cuddling up to Ethan. Calling it treatment so their late-night texts, their private dinners, their so-called emotional intimacy could wear a white coat and carry a clipboard? God knows how far it's gone. I certainly don't. A wave of nausea rolled through me. Suddenly, the salad tasted like metal. I stood up, walked to the trash can, and dumped the rest of my plate into it. Then I turned on the faucet and started washing the dishes in silence. When I finally stepped out of the kitchen, Isla was still sitting at the table, poised and waiting. She looked up and smiled, like nothing had happened. "Oh, by the way," she added casually, "I don't think you've cleaned today. There's dust under the table. You should wipe it down." Like always, her tone made it sound like a perfectly reasonable request. An observation. A task that should have already been done. The old me would have jumped at it. Scrambled to please her. Wiped every surface twice just to see her relax. But now? Now I just looked at her and thought, God, she's exhausting. I frowned at her. "I think the place looks fine," I said flatly. "If it bothers you, clean it yourself." She froze, completely still, like I'd slapped her across the face. I'd never spoken to her that way before. Not with that edge. Not with that quiet disgust. Her chest began to rise and fall in sharp bursts. She scowled, voice rising. "Noah. You never used to talk like this. You told me, you said you'd be willing to spend your whole life on your knees, scrubbing the floor for me." She wasn't wrong. I had said that. It was after a night I still remember far too clearly. I had taken off my gas mask for a few seconds while cooking, just to breathe. The kitchen was hot, the straps digging into my skin, the steam unbearable. And Isla snapped. She lost it completely. Flipped the table, sent the plates crashing to the floor. Her eyes went wide, her whole body trembling. She screamed like I'd poisoned the air. She said I'd contaminated everything. That the bacteria from my mouth had made the house unlivable. She called me things I won't repeat. Told me to get out. That I was filth. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just knelt down, wordless, and started wiping the food off the floor, off the table legs, the walls, the corners. I scrubbed until the stains disappeared, until the air felt still again. Only then did she calm down. And then, something unexpected. She hugged me. For the first time, she reached out on her own. Threw her arms around me like she was clinging to a cliff's edge. Even through the layers of protective gear, I could feel her trembling. So small. So broken. She sobbed into my shoulder, whispering, "I'm sorry, Noah. I'm so sorry. What if this never gets better? What if I stay like this forever? I'll ruin you." And God help me, I held her back. Smiled. Told her I didn't care. Told her I'd gladly spend my life on the floor, cleaning up after her, if that's what it took to stay by her side. But now? Now I look back at that version of me. And all I can feel is pity. I was naive. Delusional. A grown man, mistaking codependency for love. From this day on, I would never again diminish myself for a woman who didn't love me. Never again trade my dignity for the illusion of affection. With that clarity, I looked at Isla and said calmly, "Isla, let's break up." Her expression twisted, rage, disbelief, confusion, then froze in place. "What?" she gasped, her voice cracking. "You want to break up, just because I asked you to clean the floor? Noah, are you serious right now? That's completely out of line." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "You dragged me out today just to propose to me, out of nowhere. That alone pissed me off, and now you're throwing a tantrum? Then her voice rose, sharp with accusation. Do you even realize Ethan almost died because of you? And you, standing there with zero remorse. God, I can't believe I ever thought you were different. You're just petty. Petty and small. The moment she said Ethan's name, her anger hit a fever pitch. Her eyes filled with fire and, beneath that, something else, grief. Fear. Possession. She didn't even flinch when she said it. Didn't seem to realize, or care, that today was our anniversary. 8 years together. That I hadn't dragged her anywhere, she had agreed to go out with me, for what was supposed to be our day. Once upon a time, that kind of omission would have gutted me. Would have left me reeling. Now? I just felt empty. Like someone had drained all the emotion from my body. Like I'd finally woken up from a long, exhausting dream. I looked her in the eye and said, simply. Then be with him. No anger. No sadness. Just release. Then I grabbed my suitcase. And walked out the door. That's when Isla finally noticed the suitcase by the door. Her expression shifted, something tight, something nervous, and she quickly stepped in front of me. Noah, where are you going? I didn't answer. Didn't look at her. Just reached for the doorknob and turned it. She grabbed my wrist. Before she could speak, her phone rang. The ringtone was jarring, something bubbly, quirky, and completely unlike her usual preferences. Her face went pale. She answered the call, and within seconds, the tension in her voice gave her away. Worry. Panic. A trace of desperation. Then, without another word, she shoved past me and bolted out the door. I didn't need to ask. Didn't need to hear it. Of course it was Ethan. Of course he needed something. Let her go. I had no intention of explaining myself anymore. That evening, I checked into a hotel without hesitation. No luggage but my suitcase, no plan but peace. And then I made a call. A few hours later, I met Conrad at a quiet coffee shop. He slid a folder across the table and looked at me with calm professionalism. Mr. Mercer, he said, the documents are valid and binding. Would you like me to send them to the corporate legal department to confirm your ownership? I nodded. Isla had worn her title like armor, like being the CEO made her untouchable. Meanwhile, she treated my loyalty like background noise. Propped Ethan up at every turn, cut corners for him behind closed doors. Enough. It was time to take back what was mine. My name. My work. My company. That night, I slept better than I had in 8 years. No mask. No disinfectant. No guilt. Just silence. And finally, freedom. The next morning, I put on the most expensive suit I owned. It was meant to be my wedding suit. Today, it was my armor. When I walked into the office, heads turned. People stared, especially the women. I caught the whispers, the double takes. And no wonder. For years, I'd shown up in hazmat gear, gloves, face mask, full protective shell. I was the office oddity, the quiet germaphobe boyfriend of the boss. But today? Today, I looked like I belonged in a boardroom. Or on a magazine cover. What I didn't expect was that the entire office had been transformed into something else entirely. A proposal scene. In the middle of the main floor, surrounded by clapping coworkers and a ring of curious bystanders, Ethan was down on one knee. A velvet box open in his hand. A look of faux devotion on his face. And Isla, without the slightest pause, reached out her hand and let him slide the ring onto her finger. The right hand. Ring finger. Bold. Public. Final. 8 years. I had proposed to Isla 99 times. And never, Not once had she ever said yes without conditions, caveats, or cold feet. But Ethan? One ring. One knee. And she surrendered everything. The room erupted in cheers. Thunderous applause. Voices chanting. Kiss. 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 Ethan stood, leaned forward, lips inches from hers. And I? I clapped too. Whistled. Joined the crowd. Perfect match. I called out, loud and clear. In that moment, Isla's eyes found mine. And they lit up. She shoved Ethan aside like he was a stage prop, folding her arms across her chest, gaze locked on me with triumphant satisfaction, like she'd been waiting for this reaction all along. Like this was the real performance. And I had just played right into it. Isla gave a soft little cough, chin tilted, voice laced with faux amusement. What, are you upset now? She said lightly. It's just a demo piece the company designed. A prototype for the display floor. You're so dramatic, getting all worked up over nothing. She smirked. Ethan was rattled by your reaction. Why don't you apologize to him? Do that, and maybe, just maybe, I'll consider forgiving you. Ethan, ever the peacekeeper, chimed in with that soothing voice of his. It's okay, really, he said gently, then reached out and took my hand in both of his, too familiar, too performative, and tried to guide it toward Isla's. Come on, no need to argue over me, he added, all smiles. It's great to see you two working things out. But Isla's body betrayed her. Her smile faltered. Her hand hovered halfway, unsure, her fingers twitching like they wanted to form a fist instead of making contact. Ah, there it was. The OCD. Back again, like a stage light flicking on. Funny how Ethan grabbing her wrist earlier didn't bother her one bit. But the moment it was me, the reflex came back in full force. I rolled my eyes internally. Enough of this little duet. I yanked my hand back. No offense, I said coolly, but you two really do make a perfect pair. That wiped the smirk clean off Isla's face. Her lips pressed into a flat, colorless line. Then she looked up, finally really looked at me. Studied my expression like she was trying to read between lines that didn't exist. And when she saw it, when she saw there was nothing there, no anger, no jealousy, no lingering ache, her brows drew together, just slightly. She opened her mouth, about to say something. But Ethan cut in, voice chipper, eyes sharp. Noah, you're showing up kind of late today, aren't you? An hour behind. You feeling okay? He smiled like it was concern, but the glint in his eyes said otherwise. You should have taken a sick day. We'll let it slide this time, but next time, you know, can't let it become a habit. Ah. There it was. A subtle jab. A reminder of how easily he could bend the rules now. His way of letting me know that he had access. Influence. Even the attendance logs. Power, in all its petty forms. As expected, Isla gave a cold scoff, her eyes glinting with disdain as she glanced my way. Ethan, you're too kind, she sneered. Some people lack both competence and character. They're not worthy of your patience. There was a time when words like that, especially from her, would have gutted me. Left me questioning myself. Shrinking. But not anymore. Not today. Because I had something far more important in my hands. Without emotion, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a file. Oh, right, I said coolly. Ms. Davenport, your medical report came in. I forgot to give it to you yesterday. Isla frowned, clearly annoyed. She snatched the folder from my hand like I was wasting her time. You keep making mistakes like this, Noah, and you won't have a job much longer, she muttered, flipping it open with disinterest. But then. She saw it. Just a line. A single line. And her whole body went still. In one swift motion, she slammed the report shut. I watched her. Voice calm, but razor-sharp. "Ms. Davenport," I said evenly, "when you're ill, it's best not to hide it. You should really seek proper treatment." Isla said nothing. Didn't even look up. But Ethan, ever the oblivious white knight, leaned over and plucked the file from her hands. "What is it?" he asked brightly. "Maybe I can help." He opened it. "Read the first page." And froze. His face turned the color of ash. He stumbled over the word, eyes wide. "Alzheimer's disease?" The moment it left his mouth, the office fell into complete silence. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Everyone had been watching the scene. Laughing. Whispering. Recording. Now? They all stood still. Pale. Silent. Because the company was on the brink of going public. And the CEO, Isla Davenport, the sole face of the brand, the woman who held all the power, was now medically documented as losing cognitive function. Everyone knew what that meant. Risk. Instability. Collapse. And once the investors found out, pulled their money, walked out on their contracts, this whole empire she'd built, on appearances, on perfection, on control, would start to rot from the inside out. And Ethan, the idiot, had shouted it out loud. The moment the word left his mouth, Ethan realized his mistake. His eyes darted quickly, calculating. Then he cleared his throat, squared his shoulders, and said with sudden gravity, "Noah, look. I get that Isla's been a little strict with you lately, but that's no reason to forge a medical report and try to smear her reputation. She's young, vibrant, there's no way she's sick. This is clearly a setup." Isla's face darkened with fury. She didn't even speak, just grabbed the medical report and hurled it straight at my face. "You've lost your mind," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of chaos this could cause? If you trigger panic in the company, you'll be held responsible." I stepped lightly to the side. The file smacked hard against the wall behind me and dropped to the floor with a dramatic thud. Around us, the stunned silence cracked. People snapped out of it. And the whispers began to shift. Now the looks were aimed at me. Doubtful. Disapproving. The chorus rose quickly. "Mr. Mercer, this is going too far. This is a workplace, not your stage." "Exactly. We've all respected you because of Ms. Davenport, but this? This is unacceptable." "Security." Their words were loud. Accusatory. Perfectly orchestrated. I simply smiled. "Ms. Davenport," I said, my voice slow and casual, "you should really calm down. You know what they say, heightened emotions might accelerate Alzheimer's. Best not to get worked up." Isla's lips parted in rage, but before she could speak, Ethan stepped forward like some knockoff hero in a soap opera. He grabbed her hand, dramatically squeezing it. "Isla, I know you're upset," he said gently, loud enough for everyone to hear, "but I really think this is about yesterday. Noah's still hurt. That's why he's lashing out." Then he turned toward me, placing himself directly between us, chin raised like he was about to take a bullet. "If you're angry, Noah," he said bravely, "take it out on me. But don't drag Isla into this. Theatrics. Pure theater." He really thought he was starring in some mid-budget streaming drama. I almost wanted to clap. But Isla looked like she actually believed him. She didn't just hold Ethan's hand, she laced her fingers through his, gripping tight. "Ethan," she said softly, "you've helped me so much with my desensitization therapy. I haven't even properly thanked you yet. Don't worry, I won't let him cause any more trouble." Then she turned to me. Face cold. Voice colder. Noah, that's enough, she said sharply. You've embarrassed yourself long enough. As punishment, starting today, you're no longer team lead. Ethan will be taking over your projects, effective immediately. And just like that, the room turned on cue. Voices rose, eager to echo her judgment. Absolutely. Only someone like Mr. Sloan, young, composed, responsible, is fit to lead our teams. Honestly, I always knew he was a rising star. Ms. Davenport's leadership is the backbone of this company. Her decisions are always on point. We trust her judgment completely. Isla's posture straightened. Her lips twitched into a pleased smirk. For the first time that morning, she looked triumphant. She gave me a dismissive glance, then said with a superior little snort. Noah, if you can manage to pull yourself together and give me a proper apology, maybe, just maybe, I'll consider reinstating you. There it was. The deal. The leash. Her usual playbook: degrade, dominate, then dangle mercy like a reward. She was so used to people bowing beneath the weight of her title, so convinced that power made her unassailable. But what she never understood, never even considered, was that I never stayed for the title. Or the paycheck. Or the projects. I stayed for her. To protect her. But now? Now I was done. I gave a faint shrug, a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Doesn't matter, I said. Fire me, if that makes you feel better. The words landed like a pin drop in a ballroom. For the first time, Isla faltered. Just slightly. Like she could feel it, something slipping through her fingers. Control. Leverage. Me. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. She bit her lip, hard. Hard enough that a thin line of blood began to form. Her voice was low, clipped with fury. Drop the act, Noah. You're seething with jealousy, aren't you? Still trying to play it cool, what's the point? She paused, like something inside her had snapped into place. Then came the knife. Fine. I've made up my mind. Not only am I promoting Ethan and doubling his salary, he's getting half the company too. That dream you chased for years? It's his now. Never yours. As she spoke, she watched me closely, scanning my face for any flicker of pain, rage, envy. But I just raised an eyebrow. Calm. Unbothered. And said evenly, did you get my permission before giving him my half? Ethan blinked, feigning innocence, voice soft with fake concern. Isla's the true owner of the company, he said. I understand you're upset, but are you really going to challenge her decision? Isla lit up, mistaking my restraint for jealousy. I can give Ethan whatever I want, she snapped. You don't get to tell me what to do. I chuckled. Light. Slow. Cold. Isla, I said, you seem to forget, this company doesn't belong to just you. I have shares too. Her smirk twitched. If you want to hand over your power to Ethan, that's your call. But if I'm stepping away, I want my half of the profits. Every cent pay me out, and I'll walk. For a second, she looked like she'd swallowed glass. Then she barked a laugh, sharp and disbelieving. You've lost your damn mind. She pointed at me, eyes blazing. Legal team. Get over here, now. Calculate exactly how many shares Noah actually holds. Give him whatever he's owed and get him out of my sight. Jenna from the legal department stepped forward immediately, calm but watchful. She opened her laptop and began pulling up numbers. The whole room hushed again, waiting. And for the first time, it wasn't me on trial. Isla looked triumphant, like she was about to deliver the finishing blow. Chin raised, arms crossed, she smirked. You think you can scam me out of money? Dream on, Noah. Jenna, tell him exactly how much he owns. But Jenna's face was pale. She hesitated, shifting awkwardly as she stared at her laptop screen. Finally, her voice came out thin and shaking. "Ms. Davenport. Mr. Mercer holds 60% of the company's shares." She swallowed hard, then added, louder this time, as if forcing the truth into the room. "Technically speaking, he's the majority shareholder. He's the one in control." Silence. Isla's smile froze in place. Her cheek twitched. Her expression faltered, like she'd been slapped but couldn't quite register it yet. "I'm sorry," she said, voice hollow. "What did you just say? I didn't quite catch that." Jenna gripped her laptop tighter, fingers trembling now. "Mr. Mercer is the actual majority shareholder," she repeated. "To be precise. Ms. Davenport, you report to him." It was crystal clear. And now everyone had heard it. The entire office turned to look at me. The mockery from earlier? Gone. Their faces had shifted, eyes wide, back straighter, the room filled with a quiet, collective unease. Someone whispered. Then another. A wave of murmurs rolled through the space. Everything had changed. Isla's voice cracked. "You're lying." She sounded breathless. Uncertain. Her composure slipped as her eyes darted between me and Jenna. Where the hell would he get that many shares? But even as she shouted, her legs wobbled beneath her. She grabbed her forehead, disoriented, blinking fast, like her brain couldn't keep up with the scene unraveling in front of her. Ethan's face darkened. All his gleaming plans, his backstage rise to power, were collapsing in real time. The half of the company he thought he had in his pocket? Vanished. He inhaled sharply, then turned on me, voice cold and sharp. "Noah. Did you conspire with legal to fake these numbers? Are you really that desperate? This is fraud. Do you even realize how serious this is?" Ah. There it was. The moment when panic stopped pretending to be civility. Isla finally snapped out of it. Still dazed, she blinked rapidly, then turned to Ethan, grabbing onto his words like a lifeline. "All right. Ethan's right," she stammered. "Where's your proof, Noah? You're claiming to own the company. What documentation do you even have?" I smiled. Of course she'd forgotten. The signed transfer. The promise she once made through tears. The gift she gave when she still believed I'd never use it. She had buried it so deep, she'd convinced herself it never existed. But I knew better. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the original stock transfer agreement, signed in Isla's own handwriting, notarized, and witnessed. I held it up for the room to see, every line crisp, every seal intact. Then I handed it to the legal department. All eyes turned to Jenna. She took the document with trembling hands, scanned the contents, and visibly paled. The color drained from Isla's face. Her pupils contracted, like the memory had finally clawed its way back. The ER. The tears. The guilt. The promise. And now? The consequence. But to her credit, she recovered fast. Masking panic with steely silence, she turned to Jenna, voice cold and low. "Be careful what you say," she warned. "This isn't just some HR slip-up. This affects the entire future of the company." Jenna was drenched in sweat. She hesitated, swallowed hard. But then nodded. "I've reviewed the documents, Ms. Davenport," she said, barely above a whisper. "Everything is valid. There are no issues with the transfer." The room exhaled. But it wasn't relief, it was reversal. I leaned back slightly and offered Isla a slow, almost sympathetic smile. "Thing is, Isla," I said softly, "I was willing to walk. I just wanted half the profits. I was ready to return the shares and let you stay in charge." I let the moment sink in. But you wanted a full audit. A fight. A reckoning. I turned, lifted a hand, and snapped my fingers. 2 security guards entered from the hallway. My voice didn't rise. I didn't need it to. Please escort anyone disrupting company operations out of my building, I said calmly. We have a business to run. In an instant, everyone in the room sensed the shift. Like weeds in the wind, they bent as one, toward me. Mr. Mercer's absolutely right, someone said, voice suddenly filled with conviction. Some people were abusing borrowed power. Maybe it's time they took a long vacation. Another piped up, sickeningly sweet. We always saw leadership potential in Mr. Mercer. That whole scene earlier? We were just pressured by Ethan. Please don't take it the wrong way. The groveling came fast, desperate to rewrite history. No one wanted to be caught on the losing side. Ethan's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. Half an hour ago, he'd stood in this room with all the swagger of a man who thought he'd won. Now? He looked like a mutt who'd been kicked out of someone else's house. Cornered. Bitter. Powerless. And furious. He jerked away from the security guard circling him, pointing a trembling finger in my face. You think you're so noble, Noah? He shouted. You stole Isla's shares. A man taking a woman's company, how pathetic can you get? He sneered, eyes full of fire. You're nothing but a backstabber. A parasite. But I just smiled. A quiet, amused smile. Because none of it touched me anymore. Let the weak scream about justice when they lose. Let them cry foul when the game turns against them. To those who hold real power, the fury of the defeated is just background noise. A man flailing in water, shouting at the shore. Isla's expression turned dark. She stepped in front of Ethan, shielding him like a bodyguard, eyes hard as steel as she stared me down. I don't care if you're the majority shareholder, she snapped. I'm still the acting CEO. No one's kicking Ethan out of this company. She took a breath, then doubled down, voice sharp and cold. Noah, haven't you caused enough chaos? Do you really need to turn this place into a circus just to prove a point? You think this makes you look strong? It doesn't, it makes you pathetic. She raised her chin. I was still considering marrying you. But now? It's clear. We're done. Ah. There it was. The oldest trick in her playbook. The breakup card. Thrown like a weapon. Wielded like a punishment. She still thought it had power. Still thought I was the man who used to flinch at the word breakup, the man who would fold in on himself, beg, apologize, promise to do better, just to keep her. But she hadn't noticed the most important thing. I wasn't that man anymore. She didn't see it. I was already gone. I smiled, calm, even amused. Great, I said. Let's break up. Just like that. No hesitation. No second glance. Isla froze. It hit her like ice water. She couldn't process it, how the same man who knelt to propose just yesterday could now be this, unmoved. But Ethan understood. He could feel the foundation cracking. And in that moment, he realized Isla was all he had left. So he did the only thing he could. He pivoted, eyes shifting, mind racing, ready to do whatever it took to pull her to his side. Because now, she was his last lifeline. Ethan's eyes flickered, calculating, then he plastered on a practiced, gracious smile. He turned to Isla, voice soft, measured, selfless on the surface. Isla. Noah didn't mean what he said. It's just tempers flaring, he said gently. If my leaving can bring peace between you two, I'll go. He gave a regretful little nod and started walking toward me. Then, with theatrical gravity, he reached up and unpinned the executive assistant to the CEO badge from his chest. Without warning, he took my hand, pressed the badge into my palm, and held it there, like some symbolic olive branch. I raised an eyebrow. Before I could ask what kind of performance this was supposed to be, he suddenly staggered backward. Like an invisible force had shoved him. He stumbled, lost balance, and crashed hard into the corner of a nearby desk. A sharp grunt of pain escaped him, low and strained, just loud enough to draw attention but still sound noble. Isla snapped. She rushed to him in a frenzy, dropping to her knees as she clutched his arm. "Are you okay? Ethan, can you hear me? We need to get you to a hospital." Ethan clung weakly to her wrist, eyes fluttering as if he were barely holding on. "I'm fine," he whispered hoarsely. "Please, don't be mad at him. He didn't mean it. It wasn't his fault." That's when it hit me. A setup. A pathetic, perfectly timed victim act. And Isla? Right on cue. Her eyes welled with tears. Her breath came faster, tighter. Then she turned and looked at me like I'd just thrown Ethan through a window. There was rage. There was heartbreak. And worst of all, there was blind belief. She saw me not as the man who stood beside her for 8 years, but as a threat. A villain. The cause of Ethan's pain. "Noah, he already said he'd leave," Isla shouted, her voice breaking. "Why won't you just let him go?" Then she snapped. Her hand flew up, fast and sharp, aiming straight for my face. But I caught her wrist effortlessly. Didn't flinch. Didn't raise my voice. Just held her still, and gently pushed her arm back toward her own shoulder. It was barely a forceful move. But it was enough. She froze. The rage melted into confusion. She rubbed her wrist like it stung, staring at me with wide, stunned eyes. Then came the soft, breathless accusation. "You've never fought back before," she whispered. "Noah, you've changed." Changed. Yes. She was right about that. I had changed. I no longer loved her. She was still the same woman, fragile, willful, impulsive. But the man in front of her was done being the doormat. I used to let everything slide. The screaming, the silence, the slaps. Because I thought softness was love. Because I believed that real men protect the women they love, even from themselves. But the truth is, some people just aren't worthy of being protected. Behind me, Ethan picked his moment. He lowered his gaze, speaking with a humility so fake it practically shimmered. "It's okay, Isla. I know I was a mistake from the beginning," he said, sighing like a saint. "I'll leave. Please, don't fight with Noah over me. I couldn't live with the guilt." He winced and tried to get up, clutching his waist like it might snap in half. As he rose, he tugged his shirt up just enough to reveal a spreading bruise across his lower back, exactly where he'd slammed into the desk earlier. He let the office catch a glimpse. Just long enough. Then he whispered, all broken and brave. "Noah might have lost his temper today, but I know, he'd never hurt you the way he hurt me. His delivery? Oscar-worthy. Someone really should have handed him a talent agent's card on the spot." Isla had always been soft on that act. Every time Ethan pulled his poor me routine, voice low, eyes glistening, she'd eat it up. And I'd pay the price. Whenever he so much as looked wounded in front of me, she'd accuse me of bullying him and we'd fight for hours. Today? He'd gone full martyr. And I'd stood my ground. So yeah, I'd mentally braced for impact. God knows what Isla would do this time. But I didn't expect what came next. Smack. A crisp, clean sound cracked through the office like a gunshot. All heads whipped around. Ethan stood frozen, one cheek blooming red, a handprint rising like a brand on his skin. Isla was flexing her wrist. Like the slap had taken some effort, but not much. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and positioned herself right in front of me. Protective. Calm. Like I was the one who'd just been hurt. Ethan blinked, stunned. His lips parted in disbelief. Isla, what the hell? But Isla cut him off with a roll of her eyes. She scoffed, full of disdain, and shot him a look that could curdle milk. Who even are you, she said. Accusing my boyfriend like that? As if he'd ever hurt someone. The room went silent. Even the gossipers didn't know what to say. Just moments ago, Isla was hurling accusations at me and threatening to throw me out of my own company. Now she was shielding me like I was her entire world. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Like we were watching two different versions of Isla, the prosecutor and the protector, just seconds apart. I tilted my head slightly, narrowing my eyes. And for the first time all day, I wasn't sure what Isla was thinking. Not anymore. From where I stood, I could only see the crown of her head. The faint whirl in her hair. The way her lips were pressed into a tight, focused line. A single bead of sweat glistened on her nose. She was trembling, barely. Was this the Alzheimer's? Or a calculated pivot to distance herself from Ethan and protect her position? The thought startled me. I used to trust Isla with everything. Never questioned her. Loved her wholly, blindly, like loyalty was a virtue in and of itself. But now? Now I found myself analyzing her, second-guessing, reading between lines. And that alone told me everything I needed to know. I didn't love her anymore. Ethan, meanwhile, was still reeling. He stared at Isla, red handprint blooming across his cheek, as if he couldn't make sense of the world. She'd never raised her voice to him. Never denied him anything. She'd always handed him the best of everything, no questions asked. And now? He could barely breathe. Isla, he stammered. It's me. I'm Ethan. Just now. I proposed to you. You said yes. Don't you remember? Isla's reaction was immediate, violent. You're lying, she snapped. I would never say yes to you. Why would I? But she didn't finish the sentence. Because when she looked down, she saw it. A ring on her right hand. The diamond glittered under the lights. Elegant. Public. Undeniable. She froze. Her words collapsed in her throat. Like it didn't just contradict her, it accused her. She yanked the ring off with shaking fingers, as if it were burning her. The skin beneath was already red from how forcefully she pulled. She tossed it across the table, away from her, like it might contaminate her if she held it another second. Like the truth had snuck onto her hand while she wasn't looking. She turned to me, eyes wide, voice urgent. Noah. I don't know what's going on, she said breathlessly. I swear, I don't remember. There it was, that look. The one I hadn't seen in years. Not just confusion. Not just fear. But the kind of soft, reaching dependency that once made me feel like I was the center of her universe. And just like that, I understood. This wasn't strategy. It wasn't some emotional chess game. Her memory was fracturing. The lines between now and then were starting to blur. I studied her carefully and asked, gently. How old are you, Isla? She didn't even hesitate. 21. That's when I knew. That was the year she loved me most. The year she went to the hospital on her own, tried every therapy they recommended, every exposure technique, every behavioral program. She wanted so badly to get better. To touch me without flinching. To be a woman who could love like everyone else. And when it didn't work, something in her broke. From that point on, I treated her like glass. Every word measured. Every gesture cautious. Anything to keep her from spiraling. But what I never imagined was that the one who'd actually help her recover would be Ethan. Maybe it was fate. Maybe some stories are only meant to run for a few chapters. Her soft laughter pulled me back to the present. I looked down and saw her hand wrapped around mine. Not just holding it, intertwined. Fingers threaded through fingers. 10. Interlocked. Tightly. I frowned and tried to pull away. But she held on tighter. Her grip was firm, desperate. Like I was the only thing she remembered. Her eyes lit up, bright and clear, almost feverish with excitement. "I'm cured," she exclaimed. "Noah, look, I'm holding your hand and I don't feel sick at all. It's you. You're the one who healed me, right?" I said nothing. She didn't seem to notice. She laughed, radiant, convinced. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew my love for you would beat this. I always believed it. I can finally touch you, finally hold you without panic, without disgust." Her voice trembled with joy. "Noah. I can finally say yes. I can finally accept your proposal. Let's get married." And just like that, the words I'd once dreamed of hearing, pleaded for in silence, waited for year after year, had finally arrived. But now? They rang hollow. Not because they weren't beautiful. But because they came too late. Because it hadn't been me who helped her heal. It had been Ethan. The man who'd only been in her life for a year. While I had spent 8 breaking myself into pieces to protect her. Maybe that's fate. Maybe the gods don't bless loyalty, only timing. Snapped out of my thoughts, I pulled my hand away from hers. Hard. She hadn't expected it. She stumbled back 2 steps, her expression stunned. Lips parting, searching for words. "Noah, you." But I cut her off with nothing more than a cold, humorless laugh. "You know," I said, voice flat, "Ethan was right about one thing." Her eyes widened. "We're already broken up," I said. "He's your boyfriend now." This time, Isla just stood there. Frozen. Her pupils trembled, unfocused. Then, suddenly, she clutched her head and dropped to the floor, knees folding, her body curling inward like she was trying to block out the entire world. "Noah," she whimpered, "my head, it hurts." A few months ago, the sight of her like this, face pale, voice soft with pain, would have shattered me. I would have dropped everything to comfort her. To carry her to the hospital. To stay up all night holding her hand. But now? Now I felt nothing. My voice stayed calm. Steady. "Isla," I said, "I'm calling a shareholders meeting to discuss selling the company. From today forward, there's nothing left between us." Something in those words hit her. Hard. Still hunched over, she suddenly looked up, eyes wide, face sharp. And snapped. "No," she shouted. "You don't get to touch the company. This is my life's work. You have no right." The voice, the tone, the arrogance. It was back. That familiar, cold superiority. The version of Isla that made the decisions. The one who ruled with precision, dismissed people like tools. The real Isla was back. She slowly pushed herself up, leaning on the wall for support. Her movements were shaky, but her expression was all steel. She shook her head slightly, clearing the fog. Ethan, still cradling his bruised face like a wounded child, saw his moment. He stepped in fast, sliding to her side, voice soft and urgent. "Isla, the company's doing better than ever. You've spent years building this, and now it's finally paying off. Please don't let Noah ruin it. You can't let it go. Not now." Her eyes sharpened. Her jaw tightened. She didn't speak, but she didn't have to. Her silence said everything. She was back in command, and she agreed with him. I couldn't be bothered to argue with them anymore. With a lazy shrug, I said, "That's fine, Isla. We don't have to sell the company, as long as you buy out my shares." Isla's expression tightened. She knew what that meant. The value of my holdings wasn't small. Even if she emptied every cent she had saved over the years, it wouldn't be enough. Still, her pride wouldn't let her back down. Her voice was low, but steady. "Fine." She reached for her bag and began pulling out her wallet, her hand trembling slightly. But just as she was about to draw out her card. "Wait." Ethan's voice cut through the room. He stepped forward and firmly pushed her hand back, a little too forcefully for comfort. Then turned and gave her a meaningful glance. Isla paused, then gave a subtle nod. Letting him speak for both of them. He turned to me, all smiles, polite, composed, fake to the bone. "Noah," he said smoothly, "a transaction this large will obviously require bank coordination. You understand. Why don't we reconvene at 5 p.m.? Come back to the office then, we'll have the funds ready." I didn't miss the angle. Stalling. Maybe buying time to scheme. Maybe something worse. But frankly, I didn't care. Let the ones already buried in defeat scramble for a few more breaths. Let them cling to their illusions. They couldn't change the outcome anymore. I gave a nod and left the office without a word. But when I returned that afternoon, I saw it from a distance. A crowd. Thick and dark. A wall of people surrounding the entrance to the building. Something was happening. And it wasn't part of Ethan's little delay tactic. Something was wrong. A deep, gnawing instinct twisted in my gut. I turned, ready to leave. Only to be blocked. A row of tall men in black suits and dark sunglasses stood like a human wall. Professional. Cold. Clearly not hired for hospitality. Before I could react, a mob of reporters surged in behind me. "Are you Noah? Sources say you sabotaged the company after your romantic advances were rejected. Any comment? Do you realize your actions may constitute corporate espionage?" Dozens of microphones thrust into my face. Cameras. Flashbulbs. Voices, loud, sharp, merciless. Like a pack of wolves drawn to the scent of fresh blood. What the hell were they talking about? Romantic rejection? Betrayal? I clenched my jaw, ready to push them back and demand they move. But just as I opened my mouth, another voice rang out. "Ethan." Smooth. Controlled. Poison-tipped. That's him. He stole company secrets. Because of him, we're facing mass layoffs. And just like that, the crowd parted. Ethan emerged from the opening like a general inspecting the battlefield. Behind him stood Isla, silent, unreadable, her expression darker than I'd ever seen. And behind them, an angry mob. Furious employees, by the look of them, eyes blazing, gripping sticks and poles, mouths curled in righteous fury. Not protesters. Executioners. I felt my heart tighten, not in fear, but in cold realization. This wasn't a press ambush. This was a public crucifixion. The man at the front, face thick with rage and flesh, shouted with the fury of a man cornered and weaponized. "So you're the one who got me fired? You have any idea what you've done? My mom's 70, my baby's 2 months old, what the hell are we supposed to eat now, huh?" His voice cracked with desperation. Raw and blistering. My chest tightened, then rose and fell in heavy breaths. I forced myself to stay composed. To speak with the calm of authority. "I'm the chairman of this company," I said, low and steady. I give you my word, no one is getting fired. But my promise only seemed to pour gasoline on his fury. With a snarl, he lunged forward, arm raised high. Mr. Sloan was right. You're a lying fraud, acting like you're still the boss. Hand over the stolen intel, now. His voice tore through the crowd. And then I saw it. A flash of steel. The man wasn't empty-handed. He was gripping a police baton. Time slowed. That baton came crashing down like an executioner's blade. My body locked in terror. But instinct kicked in. Adrenaline surged. I dropped low, ducking the blow by inches. You want to be Ethan's pawn? I shouted, voice cutting through the chaos. He's using you like a weapon, wake up. Without waiting for the man to strike again, I reached into my coat and pulled out the document I'd prepared. The signed shareholder confirmation. Holding it high, I declared. This proves it. I'm the legal owner of this company. Ethan and Isla are the real traitors. The mob hesitated. But before the words could settle, before minds could be swayed, Isla moved. Silent until now, she stepped forward like a blade through fog. And snatched the document from my hands. With no hesitation. With no shame. A sharp, ripping sound split the air. The confirmation document. Torn into shreds, fluttering down like snowflakes. Isla's voice was cold as ice. Noah, enough with your lies. Fabricating documents now? I suggest you stop this madness and hand over the stolen company intel before it's too late. I stood there, staring at the fragments of legal proof strewn across the floor. For a second, I laughed. Not out of amusement. But out of pure, incredulous rage. Does she really think tearing up the paper voids the legality of it? Isla, the same woman I once adored, was now acting like a petty child. Vicious and ridiculous in equal measure. How had I never seen this side of her before? The once rabid employee paused, frowning now as he looked at me. Uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But then, make way. A familiar voice rang out. Conrad, panting, furious, storming into the crowd. He shoved his way to my side, holding up a stamped, official packet of documents. No one touches Mr. Mercer. His voice boomed with authority. This is harassment and unlawful conduct. He lifted the paperwork high. This is a certified legal notice with the company seal and our attorney's signature. Anyone who continues to disturb the peace will be served a formal cease and desist letter on behalf of Mr. Mercer. The words dropped like a hammer. The once frenzied journalists froze. They looked at one another. Confused. Alarmed. Unwilling to risk a lawsuit. One by one, cameras lowered. Microphones were packed away. And like a wave receding, the crowd began to scatter. I let out a slow breath. Thank God I anticipated their little circus. And thank God I'd told Conrad to come armed for war. The employees behind Ethan, once wild with fury, gradually began to cool down. They exchanged hesitant glances. And then, like people doused in cold water, quietly dispersed. Within minutes, the crowd in front of the company had thinned out, leaving just a handful of onlookers behind. But Ethan? He didn't look rattled at all. In fact, he was smiling. Not a nervous smile, but a smug, knowing one. Beside him, a colleague from the finance department whispered something into his ear. That's when it hit me. Their goal had never been to strip me of my actual control. This whole circus? Just smoke and mirrors. A diversion. They wanted chaos, so they could move behind the scenes. Ethan turned to me with a gleam in his eye. Noah, the company's just a hollow shell now. You still lose. Isla let out a soft sigh beside him, as if she pitied me. "You pushed too hard, Noah. I had no choice but to fight back. Let this be a lesson, for your own good." They stood there, basking in what they thought was their final victory. Too bad they had no idea. I'd planned for this moment long ago. I gave them a slow smile and lifted my phone. "Officers, you heard everything. You can come out now." A beat of silence. Then from the shadows, uniformed police emerged in synchronized formation. Before Ethan and Isla could react, they were slammed to the ground. Handcuffed. The cold metal clicked around their wrists. And the looks on their faces? Priceless. Stunned. Speechless. Completely blindsided. They hadn't just underestimated me. They forgot who really held the last card. Later, the police informed me that Ethan had fully confessed to embezzling company assets and wiring them overseas. No hesitation. No shame. As for Isla, she broke down the moment she was taken into custody. This time, it was serious. She drooled uncontrollably, staring blankly into space. Unable to utter a single coherent word. Ethan wasted no time throwing her under the bus, pinning every bit of blame squarely on her shoulders. And when Isla finally regained her senses and realized she'd been betrayed, she completely snapped. The holding cell turned into a war zone. She screamed, cursed, clawed at him like a wildcat. But Ethan? He just sneered and called her an idiot. "You were the deadweight," he said coldly. "Everything went to hell because of you." They turned on each other like wild animals, each desperate to shove the guilt onto the other. But I had no interest in watching that mess unfold. No desire to probe deeper into their pathetic downfall. I was done with all of it. With them. From now on, I'd live only for myself. And I really thought, after all that chaos and pain, that it was finally over. But I was wrong. Not long after, Isla showed up. I'd been living in a hotel these days, keeping my distance while the company auction process was finalized. That evening, I returned to the hotel and found her there, curled up by my door. She looked like hell. Clothes crumpled and dirty. Hair a mess. Her hands, covered in raw, angry red burns, like she'd been scalded by boiling water. This was Isla. The woman who once recoiled from a fingerprint on glass. The high and mighty queen of clinical perfection. Now she looked like nothing more than a stray dog, beaten by life and left in the rain. She must have sensed my presence. Her whole body flinched, just slightly, but enough. I frowned, my tone like ice. "What the hell are you doing here?" That's when I noticed it. She was wearing a hospital gown. So that's how it was. She'd escaped from the hospital. Slipped out while no one was looking. It took her a few seconds to respond. Her voice thin and shaky. "Noah. I got burned, it hurts so bad, they gave me injections, they're trying to hurt me." Her words were scattered, half-coherent. And I knew immediately. It was the Alzheimer's. Again. But this time, I felt nothing. No pity. No softness. No instinct to protect. I spoke coldly, like I was speaking to a stranger. "I'm calling the police. You'd better not do anything stupid." I reached for my phone. But before I could even unlock it, Isla lunged. She slapped the phone from my hand. It clattered to the floor. Then she collapsed at my feet, wrapping her arms around my legs, her entire body trembling like a leaf. Her voice was a scream, raw and broken. "Noah. Why are you doing this to me too? Ethan forced me to sign that liability transfer. He got off easy. And I lost everything. I have nothing left. I stared down at her. Eyes hard. Then I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. She really had the nerve. To put me and Ethan in the same breath? I gave her 8 years of my life. 8 years of loyalty, patience, love. And never once did I treat her unjustly. But how did she repay me? Betrayal. Lies. Wounds that cut deep. At this point, I wanted nothing more than to stay the hell away from Isla. To finally live my life for myself, not for her, not for anyone else. And yet, she kept haunting me like some ghost that refused to vanish. I'd hit my limit. With a snap of frustration, I shoved her off me. Isla. I barked. My eyes locked on hers, frigid and sharp. Cut the act. I'm done falling for your psychotic little games. She froze, visibly shaken by my tone. As if my words had turned to ice and pierced straight through her. She stumbled back, landing hard on the hotel hallway floor. But she didn't scream. Didn't accuse. Didn't fight. Instead, her voice softened to a whisper. No, Noah. I didn't mean to lash out at you. Her fingers, pale and trembling, reached into her pocket. She fumbled for something. Then pulled it out like it was a rare treasure. And held it out to me, like a child offering a peace gift. I came to give you this. I glanced down, impatiently at first. Until my eyes caught what she was holding. And I froze. It was a tie. A deep, sapphire blue tie. Old. Worn. Faded in the creases. I remembered it instantly. 8 years ago. On my birthday. She'd given it to me, awkward and shy, trying to hide how proud she was of the gesture. Back then, she'd mumbled something about how my usual ties never matched my suits. So she bought me one herself. It cost $500. For her, at the time, that was a small fortune. I remember asking her where she got the money. She just wrapped her arms around herself and went silent. It wasn't until her best friend snapped and blurted it out. That tie. She bought it with money from tutoring after class. And selling her own blood. Something inside me cracked. I never imagined that a girl so fragile, so slender, could ever love me with such fierce, reckless intensity. Back then, it broke me. That someone would shed blood, literally, just to buy me a tie. From that day forward, no matter how cruel her compulsions made her, I kept telling myself, I have to protect her. I have to make her happy. Because she once loved me like I was her whole world. But now, that same tie felt like a cruel joke. Like a relic mocking me from the past. Isla thought I'd melt again. Like I used to. That seeing this old tie would wash away everything. The betrayal, the lies, the hell she put me through. But this time, something was different. This time, I didn't flinch. My silence made her hand tremble. I took the tie gently from her palm. Then, without a word, pulled out a lighter. Flick. The flame ignited. And in the still hallway air, I set the tie ablaze. As it burned, the fire danced in her wide, disbelieving eyes. Don't ever come back, Isla, I said coldly. We're done. Forever. And just like that, the police I had called earlier arrived. As they escorted her away, Isla stumbled, glancing back at me over and over. Her gaze was unfocused now. Lost, confused, breaking. She looked at me like a child who had just lost her home. Noah, why are you doing this? I just wanted to give you your birthday present. Her voice was so soft, so broken, it nearly vanished in the hallway echo. I watched as she was led away, her form shrinking into the distance. And for the first time in years, I let out a long, heavy sigh. I suppose that was the last time I'd ever see her again. The road ahead might finally be clear now. Maybe, just maybe, there's still light at the end of all this.